So welcome. We'll take the next few minutes to allow for everyone to arrive. But as you arrive, I would love to have you write in the chat box where you're here from today. So just taking time to turn off your cell phone, to set aside any distractions, to just write down in the chat box where you're coming from. As we wait for everyone to arrive, beginning to invite your attention within for the gradual settling of body and mind that meditation invites. And in the chat box, I see India, Victoria, BC. I see Florida and Michigan and North Dakota and Santa Barbara, New York City. Thank you. Please continue to share with the group where you're here from. And I'll first simply offer gratitude for how vitally connecting this form of technology has been during this time. I always encourage people to be mindful of how we use technology so that we can allow technology to be our ally rather than a deterrent. This is a form of allyship. One of the themes we're going to work with today is deep time. A quality of interconnection that becomes evident, clear, consciously experienced as we settle fully into presence. So we'll begin in just about a minute. And as I continue to look in the chat box, I see Oregon, Alberta, another from California. So as we prepare for meditation, for anyone who's new to these bi-weekly gatherings, the format is a guided meditation. I'll share some reflections and we'll simply open up the space for questions, for whatever inquiry is in your heart today. And this is an incredibly rich opportunity for us to connect. I see London, I see San Francisco, so people all over the world to support one another in waking up and remembering who we really are in this time. So there will be others who join us after I begin, and what I'd like to ask is that you first invite your eyes to rest. So either closed or open in a soft, relaxed gaze. Let's begin by breathing deeply and consciously, simply to allow ourselves to transition from whatever we were just engaged in to this moment for deepening practice. And as you allow yourself to really feel the air as it enters your body, fills your body and leaves your body. I'll set the context for today, sharing that I just last week began teaching a month-long Dharma course on deep time, slowing down as a revolutionary act. This teaching comes from Eihei Dogen, 12th century founder of Soto Zen, and Uji, or being time, is a framework in which he spoke of being all time when we are in the present moment, and all beings time when we're in the present moment. So as you continue to settle in, just feeling your body's relationship to gravity and your body's contact with the surface beneath you. The touch of air on your skin. The atmosphere surrounding you, the space you're in. I'll acknowledge that just the wood behind me, the wood in my home, through deep time connects me to the trees from which this wood came, the forest from which this wood came, the seed that grew the tree, the soil, water, and sunlight. As you connect with your breath and simply allow your breath to breathe you, welcoming your breath into whatever its natural rhythm is today. Consider that our breath itself connects us to deep time, all time being, all beings time. Consider that just as you are with the inflow and outflow of breath moving through your body, the earth too inhales and exhales oxygen. The breath you're breathing right now is our shared breath. This oxygen coming from the entire planet's forests, bacteria in ocean and lakes, radiation from the sun, from stardust, algae, this very breath that you're breathing. It's the same air comprised of the same atoms that your ancestors breathed every day of their life. It's the same air that you breathed when you took your first breath the moment you were born. And so as you settle in to meditation, just letting yourself begin to soften and gradually surrender more and more to stillness. Stillness of body, stillness of mind, just allowing the settling. Let yourself rest into this reminder of the interconnection that is who you are in every single moment of your life. And as we meditate, we'll just allow our breath to be our anchor, the cyclical rise and fall of breath, as we allow our awareness to expand organically. Meeting whatever arises, meeting whatever is, here and now, with welcome. With kindness. Dropping into deep time. The spaciousness within and out that is always available. Simply a matter of learning to soften the habit of giving attention to the mind that separates, also the mind that battles and resists or tries to control time. Just dropping it. And if there's anyone here today for whom breath is a challenging anchor, perhaps if you're experiencing the virus personally, just to allow the sensations of your body to be your anchor as you invite your awareness to expand naturally, organically. And as you meet the internal and external landscape today, as you notice in the mirror of stillness, what is the weather, what is the climate within my body today? What is the climate within my heart today? I'll remind you that this is an alchemical practice of turning towards rather than away. If there is pain or difficulty, heartache, or fragility that you are present to today, If there's anxiety or irritation or rage today, always our practice is to turn towards and be with the same curiosity we can bring to our breath that connects us to the entire universe and that connects us to all of time. Who is the messenger of this emotion? What is the message, the invitation of this shadow, perhaps? Shadows being those aspects of ourself that we tend to push away and feel are out of alignment with how we see ourselves. When we drop in to deep time, folks, when we acknowledge that all time being, right here and now, and all beings, time, we're clear that even those emotions, even those things we perceive as shadows, are part of the larger unfolding of time. Many come from our ancestral lineage. Many come from the challenges that those who came before us faced. And those feelings arising in this moment are a gift, an opportunity, perhaps finally, to turn towards, to acknowledge just not for yourself, but for all beings, all of history, for one another, for the entire realm of our human relationships throughout all of time. That we are being given an invitation now, in this moment, to turn towards and listen. Honoring the sacred messenger, even of difficult emotion. Honoring the sacred messenger of whatever is arising. Saying this too needs to be met with care. All of life needs to be met with care. On behalf of all beings, are we willing to meet ourselves in this moment with care, with kindness? If tears arise, are you willing to honor the tears of your ancestors? The tears of what you contain in this body as an expression of deep time. In our meditation, as we continue to settle, just surrendering more and more fully to stillness. allowing some space around our thoughts, our feelings, our experience. It becomes easier and easier to notice that all of our thoughts, all of the sensations in our body, our feelings, arise and pass, arise and pass. We feed identity and suffering. We feed the process of selfing, being seduced by the small bubble of separate self, when rather than observing with curiosity and fascination, really acknowledging the sacred nature of emotions that may have come from long ago, when we get caught in them and feed them rather than practice this stepping back, we affirm the process of creating limiting beliefs, limiting perceptions, a very limiting sense of who we are. This is selfing, affirming the bubble of separate self. And so practice really invites us to step back, to soften, to surrender to this stillness in which we can simply see more clearly. This stillness where there is all the space in the world to welcome and honor every single human experience since before the beginning of beginningless time. Remembering in this moment that there is nothing you need to do or push away. Nowhere to get to. Allowing yourself to find relief by fully resting into this moment of time, which contains all of time. Meditating being the practice of listening to life, moment by moment, as it unfolds. Relaxing into being the unfolding of time. you might invite your breath to deepen now. Maybe resting your attention at the center of your chest, where you can feel the expansion and contraction of your lungs and rib cage while you breathe. Still a sense of your breath breathing you. And turn all of your attention now to sound. As we begin to bring our sitting meditation to a close, noticing that when you allow yourself to deeply listen, simply to the sounds surrounding you in this moment of time, listening itself is a portal to interconnection. So I'm noticing the soft breeze outside, the bird song, the subtle voice of my husband in the other room. And as you take in a couple more deep breaths, just set the intention to stay connected to this quality of deep listening. This way of subtly and wholeheartedly paying attention as we slowly transition into our group discussion. Take a moment to appreciate yourself for your practice, maybe resting a hand on your heart. Offering yourself some clear compassion. If your eyes are closed, please gently open your eyes. And you're welcome to stay in the same position or make any shift to your physical posture as we move into our group discussion. The invitation is to follow your curiosity, to notice what questions you're bringing today or what inquiries arise as you listen to other people's questions and the responses that I offer, and to just place whatever is alive for you in the chat box, okay? So I see we already have one question, but I just want to give people a minute to look within and to see if there's anything that would support your practice today to ask. And so let's see. I see Jerome in France. Hi, Jerome. And I see an anonymous question. And I would like to ask Lauren to read the questions. Let's maybe start with Jerome's question, and then we'll move to the anonymous question.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
So I realized then often I'm facing restlessness as a problem during meditation, while sometimes it's simply life energy that's just as demeaning, or I'm sorry, that just is demanding to be used and honored. I learned since childhood that too much energy is wrong and that I should calm down. And now I'm repeating that pattern in the contemplative practice. Could you speak about how one can be more honoring and accepting of energy during meditation?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for this question, and it's such an important one. I was talking to a friend just recently who practices Chinese medicine, and they have such a beautiful framework for the balance of yin and yang, receptivity and active force, which nourishes life. And they have a lens that is quite brilliant on many levels, but one of which is that it really acknowledges where there's literally lack of health being created by a need to express when we're dampening that, or lack of health when we're imbalanced on the other side and in way too much activity, busy, 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 and not enough rest. So I think of meditation as a fabulous teacher. And when I say meditation, I'm talking about sitting meditation and the way we bring the practice of presence, remembering the sacred, to every aspect of our life. Okay, using everyday, ordinary life, using our time here to wake up. Or we could say wake down, because we're really waking up through going down into our body, our feelings, our embodied, already awakened, deeper self. This balance that meditation teaches between the expressive or active aspect of ourself and the still or receptive. And this is important for you right now, Jerome. There's first a learning to quiet, to learn how to gradually settle in to stillness, stillness itself. And I want to say, especially for beginners, that this can take time, and it also can be confusing. At first, it can almost feel like, is stillness inviting me to repress my active self? I remember a short period in the beginning of my practice where I was almost finding this effortful stillness. It wasn't real stillness, but I was trying to be still. So stillness is a field of being that we surrender to, relax into. And stillness or emptiness itself is absolutely fertile. It is a field of vibrant aliveness, deeply nourishing. That said, we're not emphasizing stillness over your expressive nature. We access our expressive nature first simply by, along with resting into presence, learning how to pay attention with fierce compassion. And that means the active or expressive aspect of our nature. When we notice thoughts arising that are pulling us away from presence, dropping them. When we notice a voice that is unkind, and I would say, as for instance, a voice of self-hatred speaking to us, not needing to listen to it, we can learn to turn to that voice and say with authority, shut up. My attention is here on what is whole, okay? There is a fierce compassion required in presence. When we learn to engage with our world more through presence, again, there's a very receptive still part. We talk about this as deep listening, as being open and willing to pause and really be with our experience before we maybe express something. And this is significant in a culture where a lot of people are just taught, hear what someone's saying, not really, and then just dive in with your opinion, positionality, your expression. Express, express, express. So this is really important to develop this receptive way of being, in addition to the expressive aspect of learning how to speak your truth in the moment, learning how to trust your internal authority to guide you to express from your authentic self rather than from your conditioning, to speak up when that is what's needed. So if I were to go further in this, Jerome, I would say this also brings in our body and our body's ability to remember who we are through both stillness, so sitting meditation itself could be all that we need, the experience of it over the cognitive understanding of it, to drop into a real remembering of something so much larger than this bubble. But movement practice can be equally valuable. So I have both a sitting meditation practice and a conscious movement or dance practice. Both are portals to remembering. Okay? So you mentioned restlessness in your question, restlessness in your meditation, and there's a couple of things I would invite on a practical level. One is just that before we meditate, let's acknowledge that we might have been going along paying less subtle attention, and meditation is ultimately a teacher in paying attention with curiosity and openness and kindness all of the time, if we are willing. But along the way, it can be wise before you go right to sitting to take a few minutes to transition and settle. Because if you were not paying really close attention, then there might be a lot of activity in the mind. There might be an agitation you hadn't even noticed that then it's going to be right there front and center for you to meet when you're just sitting. Take a few minutes to do yoga as an example. Take a few minutes to just stretch. Take a few minutes to release some of the surface tension that there might be in your body, and to check in and ask the question, who's here right now? Through what lens am I perceiving? Just to bring more awareness to the internal landscape before you drop into physical stillness with it. So I hope that that is helpful. And I want to say one more thing about it. Jerome, you mentioned the messaging that I think is so pervasive in our world that a lot of people receive. Your energy is too much, or your energy is not enough, just through that lens of collective judgment. I remember being a kid. I've worked with so many people who remember being a kid and having a moment of being so excited and so bursting with energy and so free and so lively and so expressive, and harsh. Something came down from the parents or from school authority or from whoever it was saying, that is not okay. Those moments impacted us. So to let meditation be a mirror to show you what you've internalized about messages around your energy, too much, not enough, what you've internalized that you can free yourself of, Jerome, and everyone who's listening, by paying more subtle attention and then seeing where we need to meet ourselves with kindness. Back to the notion of deep time. By the way, when you do that and you meet, let's say, the really excited kid, finally, with full acceptance, you are also meeting that kid way back in time and way back in that moment in your life when there was a squashing of that energy from an external authority. So this healing of our lives over time is invited through becoming more present and meeting what arises as a messenger. Okay? So great question. Thank you. And Lauren, what's the next question?
Okay. How do I relate in a healthy way to sexual desires and feelings of love and excitement for a friend and the ups and downs of that love sickness?
Okay, great question. And at some point, I haven't set the date yet. I'll say that we do have a course coming up called Love Relationship Awakening. That is a 3-week immersion for couples that starts in just a couple of weeks. But there's also a course that I offer on mindful sexuality. And if people are interested, I would be open to finally picking a date for the next offering of that. And what I'll share in this moment is this. Number one, there's something that relates to what we were just talking about, and that's really being with and honoring your own energy, honoring, acknowledging, not, well, I don't want to say not, I want to say paying attention to ways that you assess or monitor or judge or have self-talk around your own sexual energy, and to let yourself see more about that so you can become more in touch with wholeness in that realm. That means just a sense of trusting that you're being guided by your erotic intelligence rather than by the conditioned mind when it comes to sexuality. The conditioned mind collectively has probably more to say about sexuality that's unhelpful to us than most other aspects of our lives. That's a loaded, loaded realm for modern humans, I would say, because of so much conditioning that's come from historical trauma, collective trauma, Judeo-Christian, punitive kind of stuff. So that's the first thing I would say. And the second thing is, I don't know if you've read Relational Mindfulness, my book on how we bring the way of meditation, how we bring more presence to how we relate. But it really emphasizes, number one, just really being willing to be with the discomfort and the awkwardness and the messiness of human relationship. Any kinds of relationships can, in certain moments, have that, but certainly the forming or newer stages of attraction, let's say, can have so much excitement and such a rush of energy and so much fun, but can also be a place where we're not dropped into trust yet enough, or where we're coming enough from wanting that person's approval or wanting that person's attention that we can get caught in some of our own internal judgments. So if you can use it as a mirror and just say, okay, this is all coming up, and I'm going to let this I'm going to turn towards this. Again, that phrase. I'm going to practice staying present with it and seeing what this messenger is. What are the messages that are held in my psyche that are being illuminated through this? And so if there's something more specific you want to ask about your dynamic, you're welcome to. But because we have other questions, let's move on, and then we'll take it from there. Lauren?
Hi, Eden. It's tricky to relax into deep time and be with what is when I meditate alone. Much easier with guidance like here. Any suggestions?
Yes. First, to know that it's a process. To know that it's a process. And you probably know this, but I'm reminding of you for a reason. And here's the reason. We are such a cognitive mind focused society, or I'll speak of the dominant paradigm, so focused on the cognitive mind, and we're so conditioned to measure and to have this sense of linear progress and where am I on the linear progress. And the more we can let that go and just learn to also completely let go of the notion of like a good or bad meditation, to just show up each time to this fresh, open, naked moment and have our experience. Practice paying attention more subtly, with more kindness, again and again and again, through the framework of trusting the process through the framework of having some awe for this process that is not linear in any way, where you can never step back and actually measure your own spiritual progress. Ego thinks it can, but it can't. Where there might be a healing going on, there might be an insight germinating, there might be a letting go beginning to unfold that can transform your life, not only now, but that is here for the past generations of your cellular memory. We have to meet this experience with awe rather than a sense of linear measurement and a sense of, oh, this meditation today was a quote unquote bad one. It's kind of like letting ourselves be the fool and just trusting that we're showing up again and again. That said, on a practical level, you are welcome to listen to guided meditations for as long as it takes for you to drop more into a love of awareness itself, because that's what then guides our practice. When we let go of the myth of practicing for self-improvement or practicing to get to that particular state, it's just love of awareness. Love of awareness that becomes our motivation. So please, there are guided meditations on my website. There are plenty of guided meditations, more than ever, available in our world right now online. So let those support you while you're sitting alone until you're ready to move on. Okay? Thank you.
Next question.
Yes.
I find my feet tend to fall asleep when I sit in cross-legged meditation for more than 15 minutes. Any suggestions for finding a more comfortable seat?
Yes. First of all, be aware of not creating a story over that. For instance, like that's how it always will be. My whole alignment and posturing changed so much over years of sitting meditation. That which seemed challenging at first was no longer challenging. There are just shifts that happen in the body when we slow down in this way and pay attention in this way. That said, it's so important to have a physical posture which is really genuinely comfortable. Physical body resting in comfort, easier for the mind to gradually become more still. So a few choices. Number one, if you do sit cross-legged, I encourage you to change which leg is forward each time. Just kind to the body. I encourage you to do some stretching. Again, I'm going to mention yoga, even if it's 5 minutes of working with your hips before you sit, playing with different cushions, okay? You can sit kneeling, so whether you have a little bench to kneel on or a meditation cushion. I love the kneeling position. So again, with every position, also if you're sitting in a chair, which is perfectly fine, folks, it's perfectly fine. You want a firm tripod with your lower body. So that means in a chair, your sits bones and feet are really grounded, planted. On a cushion, your sits bones, your legs, like your knees, are firmly planted. And also for anyone listening who cannot, at this moment in time, find a comfortable sitting position, maybe you have a chronic pain issue, lie down. That's fine. Comfortable position is really important, okay? Yeah.
Okay. I oftentimes notice that the difficult emotions tend to fall away during meditation, despite my wanting to inquire into or feel them more deeply. Is this simply the experience of impermanence or something else transpiring?
Well, the first thing I would offer is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with what you're describing, even though, for instance, today I talked about feelings as messengers and the importance of turning towards and being with. The invitation is to be with whatever is moving through you moment by moment with a quality of attention that is more open, welcome, like compassionate neutrality, okay? Welcoming. And there's no need to say, oh, darn, no emotions have been coming up in my meditation every time I meditate. You know, maybe you're dropping very quickly into just more of an equanimous place. Maybe that's not what's here for you to be with right now, but it's absolutely no problem. My suggestion for you is this. One, to simply be aware of, might there be any numbing out going on or anything that my attention is going to instead? Maybe it's simply I'm relaxing into spacious awareness, but maybe you're tending to get more caught in a story or in physical sensation. I'm saying this to the group right now. For some people, it's more emotion there is to work with. Some people, it's more physical stuff. Some people, karma manifests more in the mental field. But even if emotion is not there for you to work with in your sit, in your everyday, ordinary life, I can promise you that there are times when it's there for you to meditate with. And that means whether you're at work, whether you're hanging out with a loved one, whether you're doing an activity you adore or an activity you don't, that's still your time for meditation, for practicing meeting with presence, what is arising. So that for you might be more the field when emotion arises. And of course, you know, as practice gets more deep, we get to notice the very seed, let's say, of something like irritation arising, or the seed itself of something like a sadness arising before it comes a full-on rage or a full-on depression, okay? And it's helpful or a bit easier, perhaps, to work with it at that seed place. And we also have the heart to work with it at whatever level it becomes seen by us, okay? So that's a great question. Thank you. And Lauren, just to note, I want to be mindful of people who might be writing things in the side box too. So I think I see another question here, or maybe two, and then we'll move to the chat boxes as well. Okay?
Copy that.
Mm-hmm.
Question in the Q&A is, I struggle to be with the expressive way of being. There are times I can see the delusion that is alive in the field. I have and continue to meet internal delusion with fierce compassion. However, translating this to relationships with other beings, particularly those closest to my heart, is where I struggle. A fear arises that I'm not yet skilled enough to cut through delusion in relationship with other beings without creating harm in some way. Often when I speak up, it creates more resistance or upset from the other.
Okay, so the first thing I would offer, thank you, Jody, for that question, is that with time, as we practice, let me back up one more step. One of the things I love about relational mindfulness is that it helps us to access both our capacity for and the incredible opportunity for using everything that arises in the relational field as part of the healing process, as part of the human healing process. Before that kind of awareness, it can be like, oh gosh, that kind of person triggers me, and then I'm always just in jealousy and comparison when I see that kind of person, so I just want to try to avoid them. Or this particular relative, such a pain in the butt, I just need to avoid those conversations. Or I hate who I become when I'm talking to my boss at work and I'm projecting authority and trying to get their approval. Whatever it is, all kinds of things come up in the relational field. This is another sort of magical portal for seeing all of the invitations to heal the past, all of the invitations to heal karma stored in our cellular memory, right? So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is, if we are in a particular dynamic where it just seems like, gosh, I really want to be able to speak in a skillful way here. I really want to, in the face of this conflict, be able to express the presence that I'm cultivating in my life and speak with more compassion and in a way that helps nourish this connection rather than affirm divide, affirm positionality. And I just can't seem to. My strongest encouragement is that in that particular dynamic or area, there is more work to do in here first and more patience to be bringing to however that other person is being, even if it's really difficult. Patience, patience, patience. Turning within. So for everyone, it's the question, however they're being, what is it that triggers inside of me? And very specifically, what happens in response in my physical body, in my emotional body, in my mind? What is the messenger? Yeah. Who needs within me to be listened to? And I'm going to say trust the process again. That sometimes there is just some more work to be done in here, even if we're like, but I've been doing my work. I've been doing it. Now I should be able to speak skillfully to that person or to interject in conflict with that person in a way that really makes a difference. As a rule of thumb, we're learning to turn towards our moment by moment experiences guide, a much larger, more interconnected awareness, way more so than the limiting confines of the conditioned mind. So when we're in that moment, when it's like, as an example, I really want to speak up and give feedback to that person. I really need to say this. I don't know if I can say it kindly. It might just stir a huge fight. There's an intuitive place inside you that you can say, if I say this, how is it going to cause harm? Or is this coming from absolute kindness? Have I settled enough into presence that I'm ready for this? Is this the moment? Am I the one to express this? And we ask in here. If we ask up here, should I, shouldn't I, what will happen, what if that happens? We just get in kind of a tangled web of confusion. That's how confusion happens. But it's about turning within. And you will get clear feedback. And I know that you, Jody, practice this. So I'm reminding you today, but also reminding you of the patience required. Patience can be one of the most difficult and most enlivening teachers for us. And again, a teacher actually that drops us into deep time and trusting life in the bigger picture. Even when in this moment we're like, why is this still coming up? Okay. Yeah. So Lauren, tell me how many questions are left.
I see one question in the Q&A and I'll check over in the chat area.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
The Q&A question, does meditation help with grief and regret? If so, how?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Meditation helps with grief. Meditation helps with regret. This is a big topic, but there's a couple things that I'll say about it. I know that when I first moved to the monastery where I trained, I was 26 years old. I had lost a lot of loved ones. For whatever reason, my life path included a lot of grief at a young age, from about the ages of 11 to then 26. A lot of loss in a world that doesn't honor grief, in a world where I was clear from the time I was a kid, oh, you're supposed to put a smile on even when you're not feeling it. Oh, to feel this broken when the people around you aren't and don't understand and emphasize or like positive feelings. Gosh, what a shitty human experience. How am I going to navigate this? And so I would also personally speak to regret. I think by the time I moved to the monastery, I was also carrying some regret simply about ways that I personally had acted out or let my life force get dampened by the conditioned mind, by stories that took me away from who I really am. And so first, we're learning how to become more still and begin to remember the already existing quiet that is here to both hold us, okay? To both hold us and to invite our minds to quiet beyond some of those repetitive stories. For grief itself, and regret, we need to go down and into the temple of our body to fully feel, fully welcome, fully allow, fully honor the sacred nature of, fully listen to, allow to fully express. But we sometimes instead spend time with the grief or the regret up here in our minds, the added layers of story on top of it. And I had this personal experience getting stuck up here with it, almost as a way of avoiding going down here fully into it. And this is where the healing happens. This is where the healing of our personal grief and regret happens. Our collective shared grief and regret happens. So this is a practice of going down and in. And I've said this in today's session, but it is an alchemical process. Sometimes I offer to people, if you would like to send me an email and ask for a 20-minute self-compassion practice I offer, which is simply one way to begin working more with the difficult emotion, you're welcome to. I also offer personal consultations for people who want to take close to an hour together to go deeper and ask for support in one particular area in your life or for your overall deepening practice. Because we all need it sometimes. We need help, support, guidance. Apologies, I have a very repetitious itch in my throat today. So let me pause and attend to that. So thank you for your question. And Lauren, is there one more today?
Okay. It looks like mostly it's just comments.
Okay. So I'm just going to take a look at people's comments for a minute and begin to just acknowledge my gratitude for this group, for all of you showing up for yourself and in this way. To invite those of you who are willing and able to offer a small donation. Dana, D-A-N-A, in Buddhism is the practice of generosity. It means exercising the muscle of generosity for generosity's sake itself. And in turn, that's traditionally how the teacher and the teacher's energy and work in supporting so many people in the world is supported. So I look forward to seeing you again next week. And the only event that I would acknowledge right now is the couples workshop coming up. Love, Relationship, Awakening. Any of you are welcome. Thank you.